Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the tactical and historical story of, well, arguably the absolute best national team to never win a World Cup, the Netherlands, famously known across the globe simply as Oranje. They're stepping onto the pitch for the 2026 World Cup in North America, carrying what has to be one of the most fascinating and honestly frustrating legacies in the history of international football. We're going to look really closely at their current tactical setup, the brilliant players on their roster, and exactly what they need to do to finally conquer those lingering demons.
3. That's the magic, or maybe cursed, number here. 3 heartbreaking World Cup final losses have really defined the legendary, yet kinda tragic legacy of the Netherlands. Let's rewind. They reached the ultimate match back in 1974, falling to West Germany, even after famously stringing together 16 passes and scoring a penalty before the Germans had even touched the ball. I mean, incredible, right? They made it right back in 1978, only to lose to Argentina in extra time. And then, decades later in 2010, well, Andres Iniesta's extra time goal for Spain broke Dutch hearts all over again. What's wild is 2 of those losses were against the host nations. All 3 finals just cemented the Netherlands as this nation that dances right to the absolute edge of ultimate glory, only to stumble painfully at the very last step.
And to put that heartbreak into perspective, get a load of this statistic. They boast a 54.5% win ratio. That is the absolute highest of any team without a trophy. Seriously, when you look at the raw data, only 2 nations in the entire history of the sport, Brazil and Germany, win World Cup matches at a higher rate than the Dutch. Think about that for a second. The Netherlands show up, they compete, and they win on the world's biggest stage more consistently than almost anyone else. Yet somehow, that final piece of silverware remains incredibly elusive.
It's truly been a roller coaster history of revolutionary football. 1974 gave birth to the fluid, beautiful total football. 1988 actually brought a major trophy with the European Championship win. But by 2010, they kind of abandoned that aesthetic beauty for a deeply aggressive style. We're talking a record 14 yellow cards in the final, with some tackles literally resembling martial arts. And yet, just 8 years after that physical final, they suffered the ultimate humiliation, completely failing to qualify for the 2018 World Cup. It's a history of wild, wild extremes.
So, let's move right into Section 1, From Art to Pragmatism, the Dutch Tactical Evolution.
For a long time, Johan Cruyff's total football demanded absolute aesthetic righteousness. But today's coach, Ronald Koeman, a legendary defender himself, brings a much more structured, adaptable pragmatism to the pitch. Historically, Dutch football carried this really specific paradox. The team viewed itself as successful only when victorious, sure, but righteous only when aesthetically convincing. Like how they played mattered just as much as actually winning. Well, Koeman breaks from that dogma completely. Now, what's super fascinating about Koeman is that despite being a defender, the guy holds a legendary record of 193 professional goals. So, he understands the attack perfectly. But his mindset? It's all about solving problems on the pitch, not just making it look pretty. This pragmatic mindset builds perfectly into Koeman's disciplined 4-2-3-1 system. This isn't the positionless, fluid chaos of the 1970s. No, this is calculated control. Frenkie de Jong and Ryan Gravenberch provide a highly structured base, a double pivot right there in the midfield. Meanwhile, Tijjani Reijnders operates ahead of them, linking the play, while Cody Gakpo serves as the primary finisher and wide attacking outlet. The whole idea is patient build-up. They press in organized blocks rather than relentlessly hunting the ball everywhere, aiming to force opponents into predictable spaces.
Of course, there are clear tactical trade-offs to this approach. On one hand, you've got a world-class defensive foundation and absolute dominance on aerial set pieces. But on the flip side, there are glaring vulnerabilities to quick transitions and, well, historic knockout stage nerves. Because they push forward in such calculated ways, if they lose that defensive intensity for even a second, they can leave massive spaces wide open for counterattacks. And, as we'll discuss in just a moment, injuries have hit this squad in a very painful way, taking away some of their most dynamic puzzle pieces right when they need them the most.
Which brings us to Section 2, the 2026 Squad Arsenal, Executing the Vision.
The foundation of this team is undeniably the defense. It's an absolute wall anchored by captain Virgil van Dijk and turbocharged by the elite recovery pace of Micky van de Ven. Van Dijk's ability to read the game and just completely dominate the air makes him the team's defining leader. But alongside him, having a player like Van de Ven, who literally possesses some of the absolute fastest recovery pace in all of European football, allows the Dutch to play a high, aggressive defensive line without panicking. Add in Denzel Dumfries flying up the right flank as a dynamic wingback, and you have a physically formidable backline. Moving into the engine room, the midfield, Frenkie de Jong serves as the creative, ball-carrying heartbeat. He's perfectly balanced by Ryan Gravenberch's high energy and defensive discipline, plus Tijjani Reijnders' elite attacking runs. Gravenberch's recent reinvention at Liverpool has given the Dutch the energetic ball winner they desperately needed. It frees up de Jong to roam and dictate the play. And Reijnders, he's the complete package. Many see him as the absolute key to unlocking the team's potential. When you're watching a match, really keep an eye on his elite ability to arrive late into the box to score. Then you've got Teun Koopmeiners adding that constant box-to-box goal-scoring threat.
But we have to talk about a devastating blow to this arsenal, the missing architect. Dynamic young midfielder Xavi Simons was lost to a torn ACL, severely impacting their creative depth. Simons had truly developed into one of the most incredibly gifted attacking midfielders in Europe. Losing him, along with major defensive pieces like Matthijs de Ligt and Stefan de Vrij to separate injuries, means Koeman is being forced to rely heavily on his remaining stars staying perfectly 100% healthy.
Up front, we're looking at some real attacking wildcards. Liverpool's Cody Gakpo is the most consistent clinical left winger they have, but a huge question mark hangs over the match sharpness of their all-time top scorer, Memphis Depay. Now, Gakpo brings world-class potential, but the center forward position is a bit complicated. Depay has an incredible 55 goals and 108 caps, but heading into the tournament, he was managing a hamstring injury and hardly playing for his club in Brazil. Koeman selected him based on legacy and undeniable big-game talent, but an undercooked Depay is a massive fitness risk for a team with real championship aspirations. You also have Noah Lang's flamboyant dribbling and Brian Brobby's sheer physical power as a target man, adding some chaotic, unpredictable elements to the mix.
All right, moving on to Section 3, navigating Group F, the first test.
Waiting for them in the group stage are three highly specific, very real threats. You've got Japan with their top 30 global standing, known for high-speed counterattacks and deep defensive discipline. Then Sweden, also top 30, armed with a lethal striker in Viktor Gyökeres, playing in a tricky 3-4-2-1 system. And don't count out Tunisia, ranked 44th, with a well-drilled defensive structure and a relentless high press. Japan is particularly fascinating here. They recently beat England at Wembley and play the exact kind of style that exploits the Netherlands' biggest weakness in transition. Sweden's Gyökeres is capable of flipping the script entirely on his own. And Tunisia proved back in 2022 that they can stun giants. Remember, they beat France in the group stage.
Despite those threats, the numbers strongly show the Dutch are the clear favorites. Betting markets imply a 58.3% probability that they top this treacherous group, leaving the rest of the field at 41.7%. Prediction markets actually put them at a whopping 98% just to qualify for the knockouts. So yeah, the talent gap between them and the rest of the group is very real. But honestly, that opening match against Japan in Dallas is going to be incredibly telling. A win sets the tone. A stumble? Well, that can inject instant panic into a nation that has seen this movie far too many times before.
And finally, Section 4. Can they finally win? Shedding the label.
While the Dutch FA has set a minimum target of reaching the semifinals, Ronald Koeman's ambition is absolute. He wants to go further and win the championship. The Federation is being somewhat conservative, which, is totally understandable given the injuries and the heavy global competition. But Koeman has explicitly stated he isn't here to be a brave runner-up or a gallant semi-finalist. No way. He wants to bring the actual World Cup trophy back to Amsterdam.
Now consider these odds. While standard baselines give them just under a 5% chance to win it all, expert consensus models from analysts like Joachim Clement push their true probability way up to 8%. That makes them genuine dark horse contenders. Clement's model, by the way, has correctly predicted the winners since 2014, and it actually picks the Netherlands to take the whole thing. Why? Because they possess elite defenders, a world-class midfield, and the tactical flexibility to confidently go toe-to-toe with absolute giants like France, England, or Brazil on any given Sunday.
But the ultimate test isn't just tactical. It's whether this pragmatic, disciplined generation can finally overcome the historic Dutch tendency for late collapses, individual errors, and crushing knockout stage nerves. Time and time again, at the absolute peak of pressure, previous iterations of this team have suffered from fatal individual mistakes, or just a total lack of nerve in penalty shootouts. It's like a mental block. The big question is, can Koeman's more grounded, problem-solving mindset keep them steady when the lights are at their brightest in the knockout rounds?
So, as they head into North America armed with a world-class defense and a newly pragmatic philosophy, I leave you with this one question. Will 2026 finally finish the story, or are we just watching them add another tragic chapter to their legacy? The ingredients are absolutely all there, and frankly, the history demands it.
Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer on the Orange. It's going to be a magnificent story to watch unfold, that's for sure. See you next time.